All right, so now let's get to the second question that we had planned for today. I told you people that it will be the Trot company question. How many of you, before I get started with this one, how many of you actually practiced this before coming to today's session? Okay, Fatima did. How about the others? Bhumika as well, great. Shanika hasn't. What about the others? Zainab, Madhumita, Pragati, Dia, did you guys get the opportunity to practice this?
No, ma'am, I just did the variance one.
Okay. All right. So let's get started with Trot company question. Again, I'll quickly go to the requirement first before I delve deeper into the case study. So this is a flat 20 marks of requirement which wants me to discuss the performance of Trot company for the year 20x7. And then the note tells me that there are a total of 6 marks available for calculations and 14 marks available for discussion. So no matter how many number of calculations I show, I will not get more than 6 marks under any circumstance possible. So the maximum, even if I show all the different ratios that are possible to be calculated with the given figures, if I do all of those calculations, the maximum that I can earn in this question is 6 marks. I would not be able to get 1 mark more than 6 marks, no matter how many numbers I show. So if I want to score beyond those numbers, I absolutely have to write a good discussion, which is there for 14 marks that we are solving. So this is the requirement. We have to evaluate the performance of Trot company. So let's go to the case study, the question. Let's read through. Trot company is an owner managed travel company operating in the industry of VLAN, where the domestic currency is VLAN dollars. It offers a range of package holidays to customers, and the holiday price it charges to customers includes the flights, transfers to and from resorts and accommodation costs. The market is extremely competitive. Until recently, the company only offered holidays to Europe. However, following a consistent 5% annual decline in the European holiday market over the last 2 years, Trot Company decided to extend its coverage to North America from the beginning of 20x7. It is now the end of 20x7. So we have started doing this coverage to North America at the beginning, and then we are doing the performance evaluation at the end of the year. Flights to North America from VLAN are longer than flights to Europe from VLAN. It is now the end of 20x7 and the following information is available. At the beginning of 20x7, following the company's expansion into North America, Trot Company made an arrangement with a North American television station to place an advert every month. So this is an advertisement that we entered into, that every month you should show our ad on the TV. Each advert costs V dollars 600, and at the same time Trot Company reduced its level of advertising in VLAN. So rather than advertising in their own country, they are now doing the advertisements in North America. Now, 6 months ago, political unrest in VLAN caused the V dollar to fall in value by an average of 25% against all other currencies. How many of you are done with the FM paper here? Only Fatima is done with the FM paper? Bhumika is also done. Okay. So, do you people remember that in the FM paper you were studying the risk management chapter, where you people had studied how if a currency's value falls, you people will see it with your own currency also. If you talk about the Indian rupees, you always have to pay your fees to ACCA in Great Britain pounds in the GBP currency. So, whenever your currency falls in value, which happens most of the times, what happens is if you want to pay the same amount of fees to fees to ACCA, you have to use more of rupees to get those same amount of pounds. So that means if you want to buy pounds, pounds become more expensive to you if your value of the currency is falling. So same thing has happened over here. Political unrest was there in the country. So the value of the V dollar has actually fallen by an average of 25% all other currencies. So that means as a traveler, as a tourist, if you're going to another currency, another country, then the currency becomes more expensive for you, right? So this is one very important factor to consider. Trot company pays for all flights immediately when the customer makes a booking in V dollars. During the year, it also began using a new booking agent for the flights who promised more competitive prices. Customers usually book their holidays at least 6 months in advance of their departure and are required to pay for their holidays in full at the time of booking in V dollars. The cost of accommodation and transfers are always paid by Trot company in the currency of the country being visited, and these costs are paid once the customer's holiday is complete. Midway through 20X7, one of Trot company's employees was awarded a $22,000 compensation payment after a court decided that she was unfairly dismissed. So you had removed an employee from your organization. She filed a case in the court and then she won the case. The case was something that you did not, there was no reason for you to fire that employee and still you fired that employee. All remaining staff were given a 10% pay rise with immediate effect in an attempt to reassure them. So whenever something like this happens, if an employee goes to court to complain about the company, the other employees also get worried that if someday, today this has happened with one employee, someday this can happen with us also. So to reassure the other employees, they have given a 10% pay rise to all of the employees who are there in the company. Further, it is telling you that Trot company is financed partly by medium-term loans. One of the loans came to an end 3 months ago, and the company therefore had to renegotiate a new loan. So because the loan came to an end, I have to get a new loan. The new loan incurred a $3,000 of finance fees and a higher interest rate than the old loan. The new loan also covered the purchase of a new $2,000 of computerized billing system, which was expected to reduce the administration costs by 50%. So this is all of the information that is available to you in words form. Then you are given with the financial numbers also of Trot company 20X7 and 20X6. This is the revenue. You have the cost of sales. You are shown with the gross profit, then all of the expenses that you have, and then net profit or loss is also shown. So you can see that Trot company was having profits of $77,000 earlier in the previous year, and now with this year, rather than having profits, they have ended up making losses. So the owner of Trot company has looked at the results of 20X7 and is extremely disappointed. Having seen that the business has made a loss, he feels like the whole expansion into North America was a bad idea. So you see, as an owner, it is very natural that we expanded into a new area thinking that we can possibly increase our profits, but rather than seeing an increase in the profits, we actually ended up on the other side of the ladder. We ended up making losses. So how is that possible? Was it a bad decision that we made? So that is what the owner is now thinking about. So then let's get on to our answer. We are told that 6 marks are available for calculations. You people think and let me know what all calculations can we show over here for 6 marks that are available.
Changes in cost, changes in revenue,
Okay, change in cost, change in revenue. What else?
gross profit, net profit,
Gross profit margin, net profit margin. Okay. Other costs also that are given to us, we can show an increase in them. So if you have a look at the office rent, salaries, advertising, administration, finance costs, and miscellaneous, we can show the increases in these costs also, because ultimately these costs only would have led to the increase in the costs, and then ultimately the decrease in the profits that we have seen. So what I will do is I will quickly go towards the answer, and I'll copy paste all of the numerical workings, because mainly numerical workings most of the students are able to do. It is the discussion part where you people get stuck. So to accelerate the way we will be solving our question, I'll quickly bring in the numbers. We can quickly discuss also what all numbers can be calculated, and then we will head towards the analysis part. Just give me one moment while I pull up the numbers that should be shown over here. Okay, is this visible, guys? You can see all the calculations. Okay, great. So these are the numbers that could be calculated. Firstly, they've shown you a percentage fall in the European sales. So how can you find out the fall in the European sales? 640 was the initial amount, 512 is what it has become now. So how you can do your working is 640 minus 512. This is the change divided by the original figure. Original figure is 640. So you can see 20% is the decline that you've had in European sales. Similarly, you can see how much has the total sales changed. So total sales earlier used to be 640. Now your total sales are much more than that. So how can you find out the increase? 768 minus 640 divided by 640. This will give you a 20% increase in the total sales. Then you can find out the gross profit margin. Gross profit margin is very easy. Take the GP figure, divide it with the total revenue figure, right? So I can show you one example. 192 divided by 640. So this shows you 30% GP in year 20x6. Similarly, you can calculate it for 20x7. Then the net profit margin has been calculated. So 77,700 divided by 640. In this case, minus 12,000 divided by 768. This is how you people can find out the net profit margin. What else can you show? Increase in the cost of the sales. So you come to this figure. Cost of the sales earlier were 448. Now it is 618. So increase can be calculated. Then you can show flight cost as a percentage of sales. Earlier, flight cost was 128 comparison to a sales of 640. Now it is 138 comparison to a sales of 768. So this is how you can calculate this. Lots and lots of numbers were possible. Now, for 6 marks in your exam, it's not mandatory that you people will calculate all of these numbers, but as many as you people can, so that your answer can be made better with, these numbers will ultimately help you with the evaluation. So whatever numbers you think are important, which can help you to get a good discussion answer, you can calculate those numbers. What else has been calculated? Accommodation cost as a percentage of sales, transfer fees as a percentage of sales, increase in the flight cost. So flight cost earlier used to be 128, now it is 138. So 138 minus 128 divided by 128. Same way you can find out the increase in accommodation, transfer, rent, salaries, and advertising. Advertising fees, the cost that you're incurring has gone up by 50%. That means the business is spending so much more than earlier on advertising. The total cost of new adverts, so they were placing advertisements every month. That was the question. That was what the question was telling you. And each time they put up an advertisement, it was costing them 600. So 12 times the company will pay $600. That means $7,200 will go away in new advertisements. And other advertisements in total in this year, you have ended up spending 15,300. So 7,200 went into the new ads. That means the other ads you are still running $8,100. Then if you talk about the amount saved by reducing the university advertising, earlier you used to advertise in the university also. So how much money are you saving over there? Earlier you used to put advertisements only in this place. So 10,200. Now you have reduced that to 8,100. So you're saving $2,100 here. Then if you have a look at your administration costs, earlier it used to be 14,000, now it is 12,600. So you've had a decrease in administration costs of 10%. The new machine that you had purchased, what was the promise with this new billing system? What was the promise with the new billing system? How much would your costs reduce because of this system?
50%.
And
50%.
has it increased by 50%? Do you see that happening? No, it has only decreased by 10%, right? So what you were thinking did not happen to be true. Fatima is asking, sometimes they don't give the spreadsheet for calculation, so it becomes more time consuming. See, when 6 marks are only available for calculations, usually they do not give you a separate Excel space to do your numerical workings, because majority of your answer, 14 marks of your answer, is descriptive based. So it becomes difficult to evaluate descriptive answers over Excel spreadsheet. That's the main reason why they don't give you the spreadsheet in questions like this. But again, it's totally okay. You can do your workings over your calculator and put those numbers in your word processor. And preferably for all the numbers that you calculate, use a table to make your presentation better. Okay. All right. Now, further other calculations also, we were seeing finance cost has increased by 60%. Finance cost excluding the loan are 23%. Increase in the miscellaneous cost is 300%. And why has the miscellaneous cost increased? Because you had paid a penalty. You can see your penalty that you had paid was $22,000 of compensation to the employee. So if you remove that 22,000, still your miscellaneous expenses have increased by more than 100%. That means your expenses have doubled practically. So this is how all of the costs are looking like for the company. Any queries with respect to the numbers, guys? Obviously, I'm telling you this in advance only, that you're not supposed to show all of these calculations for 6 marks. This is the sample answer, so this has to include all possible answers, but you do not have to show all of them to get 6 marks. Okay? Preferably, if you show 12 workings, they will be enough to fetch you 6 marks. Okay, so if you people are all good with numbers, let us now proceed towards the discussion part. So what we can do is we can divide our discussion into different subheadings so that my answer looks a little bit organized. So what I can do is I'll divide it into different areas of performance of the business, and then I'll give my evaluation. Firstly, if you people talk about the sales performance, there are a few numbers that we were seeing earlier, that European sales we've seen a decline of 20%, but in total sales we see an increase of 20%. So if I talk about the good things first, I can see that overall my sales have increased by 20%. Now this is something which is very easily visible from the numbers. Can you think of the reason why I have seen an increase of 20% in my total sales?
Because the turnover of North America is
Yes,
increasing.
exactly. Because we entered into a new market, we did an expansion into North America. Then you can see that the European sales have actually fallen by 20%. What did the question tell you? How much of decline is visible every year? The question told you that a decline of 5% is consistently there annually. So it should have declined by 20%, but your sales, it should have declined by 5%, but your sales declined by 20% 20%. What does it say about the business? Good performance, bad performance?
Bad.
Bad performance. The employees were probably focusing too much over the North America sales, that they have underperformed in the European sales. Also, all of your customers are paying you in V dollars. So that means all of your revenue figures, they are not affected by the value of the currency falling, because earlier also 20x7 also your numbers were in V dollars. Now also your numbers are in V dollars. So you cannot say that the revenues have fallen because the value of the currency has fallen. That's not the case. So you can write the first subheading with respect to the sales performance. So you can say that Trot company saw an increase of 20% in the total sales during 20x7. This is due to the successful expansion into North America. The sales from European holidays fell by 20% against the 5% trend. Yeah, you can say 5% annual trend in the market. This is an evidence of underperformance on the part of Trot company. And then further, you can say that the revenues of Trot company are in V dollars, hence they are unaffected by the decline in the value of the currency. Right? So this is how I can frame my analysis with respect to the sales performance. Now I can move towards another item, another aspect which I can analyze now. So let's pick up advertising. Now, if I talk about advertising, you can see how has your advertising worked. Okay, I see 1 point given by Fatima. We can also give reason that Trot company spent lesser over the advertisement cost for the European area. Very good. That is also one very valid explanation why your revenue declined more. So what you can say is a possible reason for a higher decline can be the fact that Trot company significantly reduced spending on advertisement in European market. Okay, so this is 1 point that you can add, definitely a good point. Then I was telling that we will be discussing about advertising. So what new did we start with advertising? We started advertising over the North American TV. TV advertising is what we did, and that we can see it is doing well because we were able to generate good sales from the North America business, because total overall our sales have increased by 20%. But do you people think that stopping the advertising in VLAN was a good decision? For the European markets, stopping the advertising in VLAN, was it a good decision?
No.
No. Why? Because how much money could you save because of stopping advertising here in VLAN? Amount saved by reducing the advertising in VLAN is $2,100. So you only ended up saving $2,100, but how much business did you lose out? You lost out on 20% of the European sales. So that's a very bad thing that you did. It's a very bad transaction that you entered into. You only ended up saving $2,100 at the cost of losing so much big part of your revenue. And what do you people think about the 20% drop in the European sales? One more reason why European sales have declined could be, link it to the currency point. currency has declined in value. So one more possibility, if let's suppose rupee gets weaker and weaker and you have to visit Britain. So if you're going there for a holiday, you may think, oh my God, the rupees have fallen down so much in value. I'll have to bear so much of money if I go there and spend money there. So this will discourage me from taking vacations. But still, it is not a valid explanation enough to say why I have a 20% fall in the sales. If in the average markets it's 5%, 20% is still a very big number. So what we can do is next subheading we can put with respect to advertising. So in advertising, what we were discussing is that the new TV advertising in North America was a good idea since it led to generation of good sales revenue from North America. However, or just start from another point. However, Trot company did not um, did not do well by reducing the expenditure spent in VLAN, since doing that only led to a saving of $2,100 in exchange for a very steep fall in the percentage, or you can say a very steep fall in the revenue that comes from the European holidays. And then you can say another possible reason for a decline in the European holidays could be due to the fact that the V dollar has declined 25% in value on an average in comparison to other currencies. Right? So this is how I can talk about the advertising aspect. Okay, any queries still here? We've spoken about the sales performance, we've spoken about the advertising. All good till here, guys? Okay, now let's talk about another aspect. Let's come to the cost of sales and the GP margin. So if you have a look, your cost of sales, there's been a 38% increase when it comes towards the cost of sales, where your revenue has actually increased. If you see an increase in your total revenue has increased only by 20%. So nearly double is the increase in your cost of sales. And you can see your gross profit margin also fell. Earlier, your gross profit margin used to be 30%. Now it has fallen down to 19.5%. So this is a bad thing for the company. Revenue did not increase so much. Cost of sales increased by almost double than that. And the gross profit margins have also fallen down. So why have the gross profit margins fallen down? What all do you subtract when you come to the gross profit? You consider the flights, you consider the accommodation, and you consider the transfer. So if you have a look at that information, increase in the flight costs is 8%. Accommodation, it's significantly increased by 50%, and transfer cost also significant increase of 50%. So what you can say is, if you see the flight costs earlier, if you compare it with the percentage of sales, earlier it used to be 20% of the sales. Now it has fallen to 18%. That means this is a good thing. Only an increase of 8% year on year. This means that whatever new booking agents that you were using, in the question they were telling us that we have used new booking agent who promised more competitive prices. So you can see your revenue has increased more, but but the cost has only increased by 8%. Earlier, it was 20% of the total revenue which you had to bear as the flight cost. Now it has fallen down to 18%. So was this new booking system successful or not? Was it a good decision? Yes, it was a good decision. So the new system that we have put up, this actually did provide us cheaper rates. Then second thing which you are subtracting is the accommodation cost. They have increased overall by 50%. And if you compare it with respect to the sales, earlier the flight accommodation cost used to be 40% of the sales. Now it has increased to 50% of the sales. So you can see that when you are talking about the accommodation cost, your customers are giving you the payment in terms of V dollars. And when you are booking the accommodation is in a different currency because they're going outside of the country to go for these holidays. So with your weaker currency, with rupees, you're trying to buy pounds, and with rupees depreciating more and more every day, you have to pay more and more rupees to get those same amount of pounds. So this means what could be the reason why it has increased from 40 to 50%? What would be one of the biggest reasons?
Exchange rate.
The exchange rates, the fall in the value of the V dollar, which made the overseas accommodation more expensive. So this was some of the costs, which do you people think it was possible to overcharge from the customers? Customers book you 6 months in advance. So right now they have given you all of the payment. You've promised that accommodation will be paid by us. Now suddenly when you go to make the payment after so near to when the customer is about to visit that country, after 6 months you're making the payment. So earlier the value of the currency was not so weak. Now 6 months have passed and now the currency has gotten weaker. So it was not possible for you to transfer this cost to the customers because we have taken the booking 6 months in advance. Another item which you have subtracted from here is the transfer cost. So if you see the transfer cost, there's been an overall increase of 50% in the transfer cost. And then if you see as a percentage of sales, earlier it used to be 10% of the sales. Now it is 12.5% of the sales. So again, the reason is going to be the same, the depreciation in the value of your currency, and the currency, if they are facing such a risk, then what should they have done? Use some of your FM knowledge over here. If I know that I have to make a payment in a foreign currency some months later, what should I be doing? Should I sit hand on hand or should I do something about it? Yes, absolutely right, Zainab. I should try to hedge my foreign currency risk. So these are a few points that we can discuss with respect to the cost of sales and the GP margin. So I can say here cost of sales and GP margin. So what I can start off with is we were discussing the numbers earlier that if you talk about the cost of sales have increased by 38%, increased by 38%, where the revenue has only increased by 20%, increased by 20% in total. So this is a bad thing. And then what else can you people write over here is you can talk about your gross profit margin also. Gross profit margin has actually fallen from 30% to 19.5%. GP margin also fell from 30% to 19%. This represents a significant increase in the direct costs of Trot company. Now, within all of these direct costs, we will talk about the items one by one. 3 items are there: flights, accommodations, and transfers. So when it comes to the flights, I can say that flight costs have fell from 20% to 18% of the sales. Flight costs fell from 20% to 18% of the revenue. And what could be the reason? The reason behind the same could be the fact that Trot Company used a new online booking system which promised to offer better rates. So, this is something which you can put as the justification for flights. Then, the second item that we have is with respect to accommodation. So, for accommodation, what can we say is we have had a look at the numbers already. With respect to accommodation, overall, there's an increase of 50%. And if you see it from a percentage of sales, 40% earlier, now it has increased to 50% of your revenue. So how you can frame your answer over here is that accommodation costs have increased by 50%, and earlier they used to be 40% of the sales. Now they have increased to 50% of sales. So you can clearly see that there's an increase over here. Now you have to tell what is the reason for this increase. So you can say that the reason behind, or you can say the reason for the increase in the accommodation cost could be, or you can say is due to the 25% fall in the value of V dollar. And then you can further say that this made overseas accommodation more expensive. And then you can say that this cost was not, it was not possible to pass this cost on to the customers because the customers book or make the payment 6 months in advance. This cost was not possible to be passed on to the customers since they book 6 months in advance. Right, so this is how I can frame for accommodation. And lastly, I can talk about the transfer cost. So transfers, I can say the numbers I've already had a look at. 50% increase is there. Earlier they used to be 10% of the sales, now they are 12.5% of the sales. So how can I frame my answer over here is that transfer costs have increased by 50%. Earlier, they used to be 10% of sales, whereas they now stand at 12.5% of the sales. So again, you can say the reason for the same is as explained for accommodation. Trot Company is clearly facing a currency risk here and should have gone for hedging the foreign currency risk, foreign exchange risk. So this is how I can frame my answer for the second aspect where I'm talking about the gross profit margin and the cost of sales. All good till here? Shall I take you people now to the net profit margin and the other expenses? Any queries, please let me know. All good, guys? Great. Now let us move towards the last aspect, which is about the other expenses and the net profit margin. So again, having a look at the numbers that we can see, net profit margin earlier used to be 12.1%. Now it has fallen down to negative 1.6%. With respect to the other items that you're including in when you're subtracting the expenses for coming towards the net profits, you have the office rents, the salaries, advertising, admin, finance costs, and miscellaneous costs. So here you've calculated the increases in all these costs also. So if you see, your net profit has mainly fallen from 12.1% to minus 1.6%, and whatever fall that you are seeing, the major fall is due to the fall in your gross profit margin, because if gross profit is lesser, net profit will be even more lesser, and the remaining difference is because of the indirect costs that have also increased. So you can see rent cost that you see is increase in rent is 2%. 2% you can think it's okay because inflation is also there in the economy. Then if you talk about the salaries have increased by 5%. So this is also quite self-explanatory, because in the middle of the year, because there was the court case that was going on, I had given a 10% increase to my employees. So half of the year they got their normal salary, half of the year they got a 10% increased salary. So in net effect, it was an increment of 5% in the total staff cost that I had to bear. So nothing suspicious over here. Then if you talk about the advertising expenses have gone up by 50%. Increase in advertising you can see is 50%. What is the reason? Where did we spend on advertising?
North America.
North America, absolutely. So you can give the reason that this increase is because of the North America campaign. Then, if you talk about the admin expenses are down by 10%. So, this is a good thing for the business. You can say that the savings can be expected in the next year also. This is because of the new system which we had introduced. Then, if you talk about your finance costs have an increase of 60%. But if you remove the $3,000 loan, it is as high as 23%. So this means that you have to pay a very high interest rate, and maybe the next year they can still increase, which will make the year harder for the company. And if you talk about the miscellaneous expenses, 300% is the increase, mainly because of the compensation which we've paid to the employee. But even if you exclude that, still it is up by 116.7%. This is a very big increase. We are not given with enough information about the miscellaneous expenses, so we can't comment on it. Definitely the management of Trot company should be going ahead to investigate this particular increase. So how you can frame your answer over here for the net profit margin is net profit margin, or you can say operating costs. So what you can say over here is, firstly, the net profit margin dropped from, earlier it used to be 12.1% to now it is negative 1.6%. And then what we can say is, what are the reasons? The reasons for this fall is the decrease, or you can say the decline in the GP margin, as well as increase in the indirect costs. And then further, how can you give the explanation of all of the different costs? You can say that if we try to break down the indirect costs, then we can see that rent increased by 2%, which is acceptable due to the expected inflation in the economy. Then you can see the other item that we have is the salaries. Salaries are up 5%, which is expected since a 10% hike was given to all employees in the middle of the year. here. Further, the next item that you had taken was advertising. After office rent salaries, you had advertising. So, with advertising, we had seen an increase. And how much was the increase? It was a 50% increase in the advertising. So, you can say that advertising is up by 50%. Advertising costs are up by 50%. And what could be the reason? You can say that this is due to the new TV ads campaign in North America. Then further, the next item that you people can see over here is the admin expenses. We can say that admin expenses are down by 10%, owing to the new billing system put in place. These savings can be expected to continue in the future years as well. Future years as well. Then the next item that you people see is with respect to the finance costs. Finance costs also we saw they were increasing 60%, and even if you exclude the loan of 3,000 V dollars, it's still a 23% increase. So you can tell over here that finance costs are up by 60% even after removing the 3,000 loan. It is still an increase of 23%. You can say that this is something, this shows very high interest rates in the country of VLAND. In the country of VLAND, rising interest rates in the economy, interest rates in the economy can be a problem for Trot company in the coming years. Okay, then the next item that you people see, last one is the miscellaneous items. So you can say that miscellaneous expenses have increased drastically. By how much is the increase? You can see it was a 300% increase, by 300%. Even after removing the compensation, or you can say the one-off compensation paid to the ex-employee, it is still an increase of 116%. This increase in the costs is significant and must be investigated by the management of Trot company, by the management of Trot company. Okay, so this is all that I have included with respect to the net profit margins. Yes, Fatima, we will be coming towards the suggestions also. If you people are all clear till here, let me know. I will tell you how we can write the final conclusion as well as the suggestions that we can give here. Okay, so if all is well till here, then we can write our concluding remarks. So, concluding remarks can be overall, if you talk about the performance, it has been a disappointing performance. Whatever the owner is having the concerns that did we do the right thing or not, the concerns are absolutely justified because the performance is not very good. And North American expansion does not seem to be the issue. What are the key problems which the business has to deal with is that there's a very sharp decline in your European sales. You have a very big exposure to the exchange rate movements. You're making bad advertising decisions in Europe, and your indirect and miscellaneous costs are increasing by a very big proportion. So if Trot Company wants to be successful in the future, these are the issues that they should be focusing upon. North America expansion is not the issue. You are lagging behind in the other areas, and we can tell what are the other areas that they were lagging behind in. So what we can write as a part of our final conclusion is, I'll put another subheading over here, that this is my conclusion. Here I will say that the performance of Trot Company for 20x7 is disappointing, and you can further add, and the concerns of the owner are well justified. What you can say is that although the North American business North American business does not seem to be the issue, there are other key issues. There are other key issues which Trot Company's management should focus their attention upon. So what areas should they be taking care of? Key issues include a sharp decline in European sales, and then further a very big exposure, you can say high exposure to foreign currency movements. Another thing which is happening is poor advertising decisions in European holidays. And lastly, what I can think of is the rising indirect and miscellaneous costs. So these are a few things which Trot Company should be focused upon. Absolutely, Fatima. They should be focusing on increasing their sales, which comes from the European business. Okay, so this is how you people can frame your answers. You can see no fancy words that I have used, very basic, just trying to come up with as many reasons as possible. If something has increased, why it has increased. If something has decreased, why it has decreased. So the more you focus on why, the more better your analysis is going to become. If you have any queries, let me know. Otherwise, this is where we will stop for today. I hope that solving these two questions together has helped you. Was this session helpful today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right. Most welcome, guys. I'm happy that this helped you. Okay, so if you have any queries, you can let me know. Otherwise, you can exit. Keep practicing, keep revising. And if you face any difficulties, please feel free to reach out to me.